The government has announced a raft of sweeping changes. What's the difference between sweeping changes and changes? Anyway, so sweeping changes to tenancy laws. The proposal includes banning letting fees, which is a great thing, increasing notice periods and limiting rent increases to once a year. But the problem with that is maybe the once a year is $40 rather than $10 after twice a year. Who knows? Our friends at Property Apprentice have a take on this and they're concerned. Debbie Roberts joins us now. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, how are you?
Always good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Concern?
Yeah, I think it's potentially a huge concern, especially when the Minister of Housing comes out and says things like if property investors don't like the changing, they should invest their money elsewhere. I personally think he should be careful what he wishes for.
Because if that happens, and we don't build houses, we don't have rentals, guess what happens?
Rents go through the roof.
Yes.
And it's all about supply and demand, you know. So at the moment, a third of New Zealand's households are renting. And most of those rental properties are privately owned. So, you know, the majority of the landlords in this country are mum and dad investors who own
good
one
landlords.
or two rental.
Yeah.
Look, and this is the thing. I think there's huge misconceptions out there on both sides. You know, we hear from people who are interested in property investing, their biggest concern is problem tenants. And it's like, I mean, by far the majority of tenants in this country are great. The same way that by far the majority of landlords in this country
So this
are
government
great.
wants to build more houses. Okay, so their aim is to build more houses and to as cheaply as possible and for people to be in these houses as cheaply as possible. Mm-hmm. Everything that I have seen is almost like a barrier to building. And we haven't yet seen what's going to happen around ring fencing and all that sort of thing, which helps investors.
Exactly. So I think, you know, if they want to help keep market rents down, they need more private landlords. They don't need to be making things more difficult.
These tenancy, these letting fees.
Oh, you know, I'm with you on that, Duncan. Yeah. I actually, and this is just my personal opinion, I've always kind of thought that it was a bit lucky for landlords not to have to pay the letting fees because they're employing the property managers to do a job.
It's a crock.
So, yeah, it is a bit. And I've heard some horror stories about property managers double dipping. You know, they're charging tenants as well as landlords, so they're getting letting fees from both sides.
It's been so easy to let these places in the last 10 years because there's been this massive demand.
Yep.
They literally turn up, open the door, have the 48 people go through, 47 are disappointed, and they give it to that one guy there.
Yeah, and on average 1 week's rent, you know, so what, do the property managers work 3 times as hard for a property that's rented out?
Okay, so that's a good thing. That's going. But what about the once a year increase?
Yeah, I think potentially it could mean that some landlords will look at reviewing their rents more than they normally would. You know, I think the government's got the right idea, you know, and I think their intentions are good, but I think that they're trying to fix a problem by punishing the good people, you know, and one of the repercussions of this is that it's also potentially going to protect the bad people.
But don't put in place barriers to things. Why do we? It's a negative approach, isn't it? Putting in place a barrier to something.
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, one of the things that we see a common misconception is that people think that landlords are wealthy and greedy
and evil.
Exactly. And the majority of landlords in this country are mum and dad investors. You know, they're the teachers, they're the policemen, they're normal middle income people who are just trying to create a better retirement for themselves, taking some responsibility for themselves.
And we're in danger of them walking away from the market.
Yeah, and a lot of them, you know, their mortgage, most property investors have got mortgages on their rental properties, so all they're looking for is good quality long-term tenants who are going to look after the house and pay their rent on time. 80% of the applications to the tenancy tribunal are from landlords who are taking their tenants to the tenancy tribunal because they haven't paid the rent.
Wait till the warrant of fitness comes in too. Exactly.
Yeah, but if they don't pay their rent, then the landlord has trouble paying their mortgage. You know, so increasing costs to the investors makes it more difficult, and I think there'll be a lot of mum and dad investors who'll be forced to sell. So, you know, some people are saying, oh, that's a good thing because then home buyers can buy it. But 60% of the renters in this country are renting because they can't afford to buy.
Yep.
So if there's rental properties that are going to get sold to home buyers, that's good for the home buyers, sure. But on average, there's 2.1 people that live in a home-owned dwelling, but rental properties on average, there's 3.9 tenants that live in a rental property. So if a rental property with 4 tenants gets sold to a home buyer, that's potentially 4 more people that need to find a new rental.
Good place to leave it because it's concerning. Hey, good on you, Debbie. Nice to see you as always.